I'm Dave Bucy. I've been an interpretive planner. I've been in the field for 35 years, working all over the world. And I'm certainly happy to be here and to be able to answer some questions.
What is interpretation?
Well, some people refer to it as um, informal education, but I think it's a mistake to think of it as education. It's really about inspiration. Um, it's it's trying to put things into a form that people can understand. So if you think about somebody who translates a language, say it's German, then they try to put whatever that person is saying into a form that, say, somebody speaking English could understand. It's not just about the words, it's about the meaning. And so interpretation really is about helping people see the stories or in the cultural and natural landscape. It's a language we don't understand. We don't understand the language of natural history or cultural history. And so the job of interpretation and of the interpreter is to translate the language, say, of the technical specialist into a form that all the rest of us can understand.
Why do we need interpretation?
Well, I think that I think about my work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in particular. Uh, we are mostly city dwellers now, and we're actually losing connections to nature, which really isn't good for us from all sorts of perspectives. But one of them is that if you don't care about something, you aren't likely to try to save it. And unless we can have people, make people value nature, value culture, then we're not going to be able to save it. It's going to go away. So that's what interpretation. That's one of the major roles, I think, of interpretation is to create those aha moments for people where they suddenly glimpse a world that they hadn't seen before, and it inspires them to learn more, and that starts that connection, that emotional link to the natural world or cultural history that in itself then helps motivate them to want to save those places. So I think that it's very important. Um, Also, just looking at there's a lot of information out there, technical specialists, biologists, wildlife specialists, etc. We don't understand what they're saying a lot of the time. And so what the interpreter does is stands between that technical specialist and the public and translates that information into a form not only that people can see what they're talking about, but get excited about it. So we need people to get excited about natural history, about cultural history, or we're going to lose it. We're going to lose our cultural and natural heritage.
What is an interpreter?
Well, I think that's somebody who is skilled in standing in that middle ground. Somebody who understands enough about what the technical specialist is trying to say and understands the audience well enough to be able to put it into a form that the audience can then say, oh, I see what you're talking about. So it's really an art. You have to know your audience, but you also have to know the subject matter, and then you have to work to put it into a form that they can understand. So that's really the job of an interpreter.
How do you become an interpreter?
Well, I don't know that there's much in terms of, anything in K through 12, though you can certainly get a grounding in cultural or natural history. There are some programs at colleges and universities that actually teach interpretation, teach environmental interpretation, have degrees in it. So I think that that's one route people can go. I think another route is simply if you love something and you're excited about it and you want to talk to people about it, is you learn how to communicate. And communication is all about actually translating information into a form that the person you're talking to can understand. So we actually do it all the time, but it tends to be more specialized towards cultural and natural history.
What was your favorite part of the project?
And why?
Well, I think my favorite project happened very early in my career when my wife and I, she's also an interpretive planner, got to develop an interpretive plan for the island of Lanai, Hawaii. It's the sixth largest island. And it was at a time where it had just been sold. It used to be called the Pineapple Island. That's where Dole pineapple came from. He grew pineapples there. But it had been taken over by Rock Resorts to build resorts there. And we were hired by the Lanai Archaeological Foundation. And the purpose of the interpretive plan was to try to preserve the cultural and natural history. So it was something we really believed in. And it was pretty exciting to do it. We found that we got to go behind the scenes and see all the things that the typical tourist didn't get to see. We get to learn the stories. I think it's one of my favorite parts about interpretation is I get to learn all sorts of things. I go interesting places, learn interesting stories, meet interesting people. But we worked with them to develop a plan, and it actually worked. It was used to stop them from exploiting a petroglyph field. It was used to help preserve half of the island, which was important for the residents as an escape for tourism. So it was a project that worked to do what it was supposed to do, and it was one. So it gave a lot of satisfaction in that sense. But it was also just simply exciting. It started our travel kind of to different places, and as I say, to learn different stories, meet different people. So I think that's my favorite project.
How do you interpret history that we're not proud of?
For example, slavery.
Really, really good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is we interpret it honestly. And one of the things about it, honestly and without putting our conclusions to it. The interpretation is about trying to present enough of the story and the facts so people can come to their own conclusions about something. Really, I think as William Brown said, provocation is allowing people to come to their own conclusions without slamming them between the eyes with your own. And that's what it is. And so, first of all, when we talk about those stories that we're uncomfortable with, we still have to own it. It's ours. It's part of our story. We have to own it. We have to make people aware that we're aware of it. We have to be willing to share it in such a way that we're not trying to make excuses. We're not trying to attach blame. We simply present the story, present enough of the facts, and allow people to come to their own conclusion about it. And I think it's a really hard thing to do because we tend to interpret history, and I'm using the word, everybody kind of looks back at history and looks at it in terms of the value system of what we have today. And that's not all of the story, that you really have to go back and look at the value system of the day in which the history took place. And that's what I mean about presenting it honestly. Yes, it's uncomfortable. It's still something we just have to do. And we're not going to get by, I think, a lot of these issues until we acknowledge that they're real, until we acknowledge that there was things that happened that shouldn't have happened, and share that and accept it and move on with it.